Hello fellow cinephiles, 90s Film Guru here. Thanks for joining me today. For those new to the channel, my name's Sean, also known as 90s Film Guru, and I started this channel to only have my say on everything 90s. Today I'll be reviewing a film I've really liked but haven't seen in a number of years, and it's a film that I've gone back to time and time again, and it is definitely one of Meryl Streep's best performances in my opinion. Today I'll be reviewing River Wild. This was directed by the late great Curtis Hanson, who did a lot of these sort of great thriller films, and his early work, he cut his teeth on a lot of these sort of early thriller movies, and I think he does a great job with this movie. The film was written by Dennis O'Neil and stars Meryl Streep, Kevin Bacon, David Stratton, and has an early performance by John C. Reilly, who's quite solid in the film. It had a budget of $45 million and went on to make $94.5 million, so it was fairly successful in its sort of outing and wasn't made for a lot of money. It was able to accomplish quite a bit for its sort of limited budget. For those who haven't seen it, the film follows a young family whose whitewater rafting holiday is endangered when they are taken hostage by a pair of armed fugitives. That pretty much sums it up. I found this film very engaging. I've always liked the movie. I like the characters in the movie. I like all the whitewater rafting sequences that rival any car chases in any action film in my opinion. They're just so well done and well captured and are all practically done. Yes, there are sequences where there are real stunt people doing it, not the actors themselves, but the actors did do some of their own stunt work on the film, especially Meryl Streep. And I really liked that and appreciated that, and it felt very real because of that. There wasn't digital effects, which you would get digital effects now and ruin it. It's all very practical. It was shot in many places on the Colorado River and a variety of other places, and the locations became characters in themselves. And I really love the journey that the characters go on and just the whole experience of the film. How it starts simply, how we're introduced to this family, and there's issues between the husband and wife with Meryl Streep's character and David Stratton's character. And there's a barrier between them. They're very different people. Meryl Streep's character, Gail Hartman, is a very sort of adventurous character, but she hasn't been able to do the adventurous stuff she's always loved to do. And she decides to take her son on this journey, down the river and the experiences that she had just to show him before everything changes. And her husband, Tom, played by David Stratton, is this guy who's a workaholic. He's not always there for his family. He's just so consumed with work that he's not putting in the effort for his family and his relationship with his wife. And that causes a lot of issue. He ultimately goes on the journey with his wife and son as well, but he still takes the work with him. But it isn't until things unfold in a dramatic way that he starts to take stock of his life and stock of his relationships and his family. And how he rises to the occasion. Like, he starts as this sort of timid, quiet sort of character, is vastly different to his wife Gail, who's very adventurous and capable and grew up in the mountains, and whitewater rafting and everything is really part of that. Even to the point that she does rowing in a city, and she sort of uses the sound of the train going over the bridge as sort of whitewater rafting sounds. So she's still connected to it and it still means a lot to her, but she's not able to do what he's done previous. And that could be due to her location that she lives. She's become a teacher, things like that. But it starts off simply with his family. We meet these two guys, Wade and Terry, played by Kevin Bacon and John C. Reilly, and a third man that sort of is taking them down the river. We don't really know their story, and they slightly just interact with the family to begin with. But as we start to learn who these guys really are, and as things start to shape and turn, the family becomes their hostage. And it's about the journey that all of these characters go on. Terry and Wade want to escape the police for something they've done. Gail and Tom really just want to take their son on this journey. And it's about these different journeys these characters are going on and how they collide and crash together. And it becomes, a fight for survival for Gail and protecting her family and trying to work out what to do as they're going down the river. All of these elements add to this really engaging and wonderful film, and it's action-packed with great characters. It's entertaining. There's a lot of tension and intensity to particular sequences in the film, and straight away you feel connected to the characters, as they've set them up in a great simple way, and there's conflict between them, so you understand the difficulties that these two characters, or the characters, are facing against each other. and how they have to overcome that on this journey to survive. That's what really is the film is really about, and I really love that aspect. All the acting is fantastic. I think Kevin Bacon's really great as Wade. Bacon in this has this really cool ability to play this sort of nice, kind of guy, and then when he flips and you see who he truly is and how menacing and dark he can become is a testament to Bacon as an actor, and I think he does a great job in the film. There are some great anchoring points throughout the movie where he shows the kid the gun and how to reload the gun and how many bullets he has used, and that comes back later in the film. So this is really this great little anchoring point. David Stratham is kind of interesting. Like I said, he's kind of this sort of workaholic guy, and he seems like this sort of flaky character to begin with, that he's not as strong or as capable as his wife Gail is, and he just feels at a loss. But he rises up as he goes on the journey. He rises to the occasion, and I think he's really good in the film as well. But the standout for me, besides Kevin Bacon, is really Meryl Streep. What a wonderful performance. I haven't seen her quite play a role like this. This is her first sort of thriller action film, and only really action film that I've seen her do, and she's really wonderful in it. Rises to the occasion. She clearly worked out to have the physicalness of that particular character, Gail, and her ability to do whitewater rafting or rowing and all of these things. Really shows how Meryl Streep really commits to this role. And I love her choices throughout the movie, where she doesn't react to things like everyone else does. And I think that is really a testament to Meryl Streep as an actress, but also the depth that she adds to the character and the depth that there is in the character. There's a moment where she thinks she's been told that Tom has disappeared and may have died, and she doesn't cry or get angry. It's this blank look, but it's like she's working it out in her head. It's like her thinking maybe he isn't dead, and what's he going to do, and what do I need to do to help to save myself and my son. And she laughs in moments that you don't expect, that aren't funny, but it's sort of this nervous laughter, and these sort of calculated choices throughout the film that I really love that. And it's the first time I really noticed Meryl Streep's ability as an actress, because it's a simple story, but it's what she brings to it, a lot of heart and a lot of humour to the character. And she's really wonderful in the movie. I would say this is not only one of my favourite performances from Meryl Streep, but I think this is her best performance, just because it's so different to everything else. All her other roles are sort of larger than life, obviously not her early roles, with Deer Hunter and movies like that, but it's just her, or Silkwood, but her later films is much bigger, and we all know who Meryl Streep is. Where I feel in this role, she's very restrained and in control. And they switch gender roles, where Meryl Streep's character would usually be, unfortunately, played by a man. David Statham's character would ultimately be played by a woman. But they switched the roles and sort of took that gender thing and did something different with it. And I loved that. I thought that was really refreshing for the time and felt much more kind of original and different compared to the track that would usually go down characters like this and the storyline. And like I mentioned, the whitewater rafting sequences are probably some of my favourite, and they rival any car chase just because they're intense. They don't really let up, and it's about, like, it shows how with whitewater rafting you need the whole team. So she has to rely on these two criminals while trying to think of how she's going to get out of this situation. And there are things set up where there's old paintings that she's pointing out to her son that were talking about young guys going on spirit quests, and those little anchoring points come back later with Tom's character, with the Tom character, with what he has to do and how he's capable of doing things. And there's just so many moments, but it's really her performance that towers over everything, and you're rooting for her and her family. You want her to succeed. You don't know what's going to happen next, and you don't know what she's going to do next, but she's always trying to think of what she has to do to ultimately survive. And that's one really well written character, but it's also what Streep brings to it. This film did pretty well when it came out. Roger Ebert saw it, and his review, some aspects are good and some aren't. Ultimately what Ebert said about the film, he described it as good looking, and the performances by Bacon and Streep, he described the latter as putting a lot of humour and intelligence in the character, Meryl Streep. he did find flaws in the strength of the plot. He said it's something we've seen before. He said that movies like this are predictable in an overall story, that they win or lose with their details. The River Wild was constructed from so many ideas, characters and situations cycled through other films that all the way down the river I kept thinking, been there. He emphasised the lack of credibility in storyline and sheer impossibility of some scenes, particularly involving Stratham, as he outruns the pace of the river and his scenes with the cliff and his Swiss Army knife. Yeah, so there's a sequence later in the movie where how he's able to do the things he does kind of doesn't make sense. But I can see where he's coming from. It kind of feels familiar territory, and it kind of feels like we kind of know where it's going. Someone's going to die, the good guys are going to win, the bad guys are going to win. There's all these things that we know is ultimately going to happen. But I still think it's one of the better versions of movies like this. I think it's a great thriller, a great adventure film. I think even though it's familiar ground, it still is able to be a bit different in its characters and its choices that it makes as we go down the river. And I think it comes down to the strength of Curtis Hanson's direction, what he does with it. Like, if you really think about it, most of the movies we see today are based upon something else or inspired by something else or have been done before. But it's what that director or that writer does with that story and how him or them or they make it into something that's a little bit different but feels familiar. I like that it feels familiar. I like that it allows me to connect to it better, in my opinion, because I know what to kind of expect, even though there are moments that you don't really know what's going to happen next. I just felt, because of that, a real connection with the film and the characters. And that's why, to me, it feels a bit different to all the other sort of films in this genre. But overall, this is just a really wonderfully entertaining movie that I highly recommend. It's one of my favourite 90s movies in the genre. And just the performances in general are worth watching. But it's also the whitewater rafting and the action in the film that really brings it to life. That really puts you in a way on the edge of your seat. I miss old school thrillers that used to put you on the edge of your seat. Yes, this may feel like familiar ground, but there are things throughout it where you're not quite sure what's going to happen from one scene to the next. Where a lot of thrillers in this sort of vein all feel very similar, very like there's no real surprises anymore. And it just, once a movie starts and we open up, whatever happens in the first 10-15 minutes usually shapes what the film's going to be. And everything you see there, it unfolds that way. And some of them are, entertaining, but none of them quite do what these sort of films used to do and the old thrillers. And that's why I think thrillers in the 90s was probably some really great ones came out. And they knew what they were doing and able to craft something a bit different. And I think this is a great example of that. So I do recommend this film, and I like the idea. I like the fact that Curtis Hanson cut his teeth on sort of these sort of movies and went on to do different things, like LA Confidential, which was probably his biggest film, and Wonder Boys and things like that. But it's just the sort of early days of the thrillers in the late 80s and early 90s that really showed and shaped him into the director he ultimately became, and with his sad passing, but he still has a legacy of really great film. Anyway, that's it. That's my review for River Wild. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please subscribe down the bottom, follow my letterbox on Facebook. But otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.